Frenetic, I feel, overall has the advantage going into this first match, which is going to be a Rogue Mirror.
Yeah, and I think to be fair to Gabby, you know, we chose to have a little bit of fun at his expense with the bad Warlock stats, but that's kind of been the story of his GM week so far, is that Warlock has been really suffering because a lot of his opponents were leaning their decks and their techs towards targeting Handlock, gaining percentage against Handlock specifically, which I think is going to be a fairly common strategy overall, because it does feel like Handlock and Warlock in general is going to be a deck that people will still choose to bring, but probably has some exploitable weaknesses at this point. So if there's any genuine criticism, I suppose, of having a bad win rate with Warlock this week, it's should you have Warlock in your lineup at all? I think that's exactly a better question, as opposed to, you know, how well losing you are doing with that individual deck. Yes.
Regardless of that, it looks like Gabby's got a pretty solid opening Rogue start here. The double field contact Octobot, and got that secret passage, which is often seen in like the early stages of the mid game, just to skip a turn and just dump some cards out, which can be pretty useful, especially if you have a hand like this, where Gabby's not necessarily going to be doing like a super early field contact just because of mana restraints.
Job's done.
Octobot comes down, Frenetic immediately turns his nose up at it, but it does not allow it to distract him from his Foxy Frog swindle play, and now the Shadow Step being picked up again. And Gabby says, you know what? More of the same, I think.
Yep, got Dagger to follow up with, of course. After that Shadow Step, it means he's going to be able to kill this, no problem.
Ooh. Frenetic gonna choose to leave second Octo unproctoed, which means Gabby now has a lot of options, yes, including this secret passage now for a potential big tempo discount. He will be looking for cards that add permanent cards to his hand at this point, as well as a procker. Did not really hit any of that outside of the One Thief.
Not really the best choices here.
But yeah, for example, let's say he lands on like Swindle Guardian Org Merchant off his secret passage there, right? He can then play the Swindle, which gives him 2 cards that will be permanent and go back to his original hand, which he could then choose to discount with the Guardian Org Merchant. So that would have been the dream scenario kind of hand from that situation. As it stands, it's a little bit more awkward than that.
It does just tickle me seeing effectively just tempo Octobots all over the place.
Yeah. What's happening? This is such a weird opening. Secret passage for 0 mana, and I think now Gabby will Shadow Step the One Thief again for a little bit of an extra value, going back to the original hand. Hold on to it now with double discounted contacts to come. Such an unusual way to play out an opening curve with Octobots, but you can see how effective it's going to be for Gabby because he has that luxury of double field contact in the opening hand. So really, if he gets 6 total mana cut off 2 field contacts, it almost doesn't matter if he doesn't discount a single other card in his deck at that point.
Yeah.
His discounts are going to be significantly better than that.
But there's also weird stuff as well, where it could be like, depending on what happens this turn from Frenetic, of course, it could be 1 proc, contact, spend the 0 costs, and then proc again, and then keep going, right? Like, the timing of these could be good. Of course, here we can see Frenetic does manage to double proc them himself, so at least he stops the crossover procs that can be done from contact to contact, but most importantly, as you mentioned, just this hand alone, it is disgusting.
Too quiet.
17 cards left in deck, 2 0-mana contacts in your hand. It's just lethal. Don't know what he's doing. It's just a throw from Gabby.
Should have played both contacts, yeah.
Yep.
I'd with that.
TBH, Gabby's washed. Doesn't even see the lethal this turn.
Yep. Rogue stat's going to follow the Warlock stats shortly.
Give me that. Not what I want.
Under a 2. Okay. Yep. Cycle through the board space, basically. Still 3 out of the 4 mana left, and Gabby did about 100 things so far this turn.
Yeah. Just exchanging Penflingers with Prize Plunderers, basically, for as long as he possibly can. He'll call that a turn and probably just re-dagger with the remaining mana on this turn.
It's a pretty solid 2-mana turn, I think.
Yep.
And for then it's like, huh. Now what can I do to respond to that? All of my cards cost mana. Hey, this just a do anything to kill field contact turn?
Too quiet.
Oh, I don't even know where you start, Sol.
Probably. Give me that.
No idea.
He's just going to say, okay, Penflinger field contact dead. My field contact drew a couple of cards, hope for the best, but I think this is just a play to make a play this turn from Frenetic, and I'm definitely not trying to be disrespectful, but I think that's just the point anyone would be at in this particular game.
Yeah, completely agree. 6 cards behind on draw. He's already seen 1 contact get used. I think he will suspect almost that the other contact is in hand, because obviously we can see that there was... Actually, no, both Shadow Steps have already been used,
yes,
right?
Both.
One was used on an Octobot and one was used on a One Thief.
Correct.
So there was no opportunity to Shadow Step the field contact in that position. So actually, I suppose Frenetic's out in his own mind is that the remaining field contact is bottom half, bottom 10, bottom 5 even, I guess you would have to hope.
30th.
At this point. Yeah, to give Frenetic enough time to be able to get back into this, but I think you are absolutely right. I think it is fairly hopeless for Frenetic at this point.
And shields everywhere now. I would imagine Gabby's going to value killing this Orc Merchant one way or the other, right? Just because it's worth more to have a Divine Shield on the board. Looks good. Again, the mana just isn't there, is it? It's actually like Gabby's getting very close to just having the OT, like the burst combo, but he's also just winning on board through tempo every single turn, right? He has Kazakus and potentially a 1-mana +1 Golem as well. Summon a copy. I didn't see what he picked first.
Give me that. Job's done.
Penflinger Prize Plunderer just to scramble to survive the turn on board, but still just facing down.
There you go.
What, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 total, just from what you can see, including the dagger.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Gabby saying, good enough.
Yeah, because if he can even get there without spell damage, it's still enough, right?
Yeah, well, I think, so the crucial breakpoint, which Gabby has now hit, was exactly what you're pointing out. Even if he drew 0 bleeds with his spell damage this turn, as long as at some point all of the bleeds come out of the deck, he has enough damage to win the game, right? So even if he didn't do it that turn, all he then has to do is draw a few more cards with a Swindle or a Secret Passage or whatever else he has left remaining to be able to end the game, because even at 2 damage a shot, the bleeds will end the game at that point as long as he pushes everything face.
Exactly, yeah, and that means Gabby just strolls to a very, I don't want to say easy, because that probably takes away from just the piloting of the deck, but very strong 1-0 win there. He got a really strong opening hand, had the fun with the Octobots in the early game that Frenetic just couldn't realistically answer, and honestly, as you mentioned, right, 2 heavily reduced field contacts. Not really any deck's going to beat that in any real circumstance, right? So gets a good solid 1-0 lead. He's going to be jumping onto his Druid, which is the Anacondra. Is that where we're at now? Of this Druid with Lady Anacondra, Claw Machine, the Glowfly package, and of course that Celestial Alignment. And then Frenetic is going to be on his Demon Hunter for this next game.
Yeah, Gabby's made the switch in this direction in recent weeks. He was on a Cthulhu Druid kick for quite some time. I think himself and Blythe were both playing that deck very well throughout Ladder and Grandmasters, I would say. And I think at the time that pick did make sense. But I do like the transition over to the more Anaconda-based version of the Druid, more token-based version of the Druid overall, just because it does pick up a little bit of percentage in a couple of key matchups, one of which being the Mirror when it comes up against the Cthulhu version of the deck, and there's a few others as well where just just that role playing as token druid with, you know, the glowfly swarm curve that you have instead of the celestial alignment curve in some abilities just gives you these outs in certain matchups, which I think does improve your chances.
Well, in any aggro matchup for a start, right? Like,
yes,
it's significantly better. But I agree, and I also think for some of the players who have clearly preferred or liked the Cthulhu one more, I think the results, especially last week, were kind of hard to ignore, right? Because just we saw the Druid do so much work and just have at least solid matchups in so many relevant matchups you'd expect to see going forward. So I do like the switch as well. Frenetic is going to be playing his OTK Demon Hunter though, and not really teched in any real way. There's no Viper in there, unlike Gabby, who is running a Viper in his list. So yeah, just very, very standard OTK Demon Hunter that I can see from Frenetic.
Yes, I believe Frenetic's list is the exact version that I currently play on ladder with the single philosophy. No Magtheridon and no Viper, which I suppose at this point you can almost say is a tech in itself, right? No, like, you can call the philosophy the tech, because in a lot more decks that ends up being a Magtheridon. I think Magtheridon's ended up being very common these days, but this is the list I do find myself personally favouring when I have to play against the field, but obviously that's no comment on what the correct part of a Conquest lineup is.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is Frenetic's playing the subtle list of Demon Hunter, so
sure,
we'll see how it pans out. If it wins, it's good. If it loses, you're rubbish. Most important.
Not sure if I'm signing up for this going into Druid, like Celestial Alignment Druid on the other side, but okay.
No confidence in the list you named after yourself, Sottle. That is disappointing to hear.
What, did I just fall asleep for a second and miss myself doing that? Because that is not my recollection.
Here, though, Gabby got the ramp. He's got the glowflies if he wants to go there. But a glowfly is often something you want to aim for, or do you think he's going to more focus on ramp, card draw, and try and get the Anaconda turns to go off with Celestial?
I think this curve does play very nicely to at least ask the question, right? Because I think that's what Glowfly Swarm is in a lot of matchups. It's, I kind of get to free roll this on turn 5. If you don't have it, you die. But I think this curve plays quite nicely with that. But you see now with the Anaconda going down, that's kind of double punishing, because it does mean not only does Gabby not have those big kicker turns coming in later, but it's also a little bit damaging for that Glowfly Swarmer, though I think he will be okay with the one additional spell draw on the following turn just to max out anyway. But never mind.
But after all that, doesn't matter, Clyde.
Yeah.
I will say that Claw Machine is going to be awfully lonely in his deck now, though, with no Anaconda.
True. Well, it all came
still
back.
A Glowfly turn. it's worse, but it could happen. Oh.
Oh. You don't say.
Funnily enough, Frenetic actually, before he played Glide, did have the Immolation Aura in his hand.
Yes.
So just kind of hilarious that at this point now, weirdly enough, the Glowfly is stronger against Frenetic, even though there's less minions.
You are 100% correct, yes. And Frenetic actually finds himself in a very odd position indeed now, because although the Glowfly was weak, it's not only that the Glowfly did come down, it's that the Arbor Up that was in the original hand has also rejoined the party. So these 3 minions
Solar from the
sticking
top
around after the weapon swing, we're in trouble.
Nothing really Frenetic can do about it either.
Looking for an I-beam? Okay. Yeah, I think he was looking for an I-beam there from the double jump. Still can look for an I-beam from the double jump.
Okay.
Cuts in. It cuts in a little bit, stops the Arbor Up punish or the Solar Arbor Up punish to some degree. I think because he has second glide, acrobatics, well actually second glide, third glide and acrobatics in hand, he has no worries about card draw, right? Like sometimes you'd look at a hand like that and say, well, if I play 2 double jumps here, what's my next quest step actually looking like? But Frenetic has no such problems. So I think that was a smart call for him there to just cut into some of the damage.
Yeah, does Gabby take Landscape in here, weirdly enough? It'll be 2 mana and then he can innovate out the Arbor Up. It was not to, of course, but it was an option.
It was an option, yeah, but instead he chooses to go with the alignment here. Just make sure that's getting played before the quest gets completed. That is kind of crucial. And it now leaves Gabby in a position where now he doesn't have the Anaconda in the deck anymore, so Germination can't be paired with that, but still pretty good if he picks up Cenarian Ward in the near future, something like that, right? To be able to just get some big minions in play, really pressure down the Demon Hunter, because he needs to find some way to actually end the game that isn't the conventional method at this point, right? Because the conventional method of the big Anaconda is not going to do it.
It's where I'd add ramp to that list as well that you were saying he needs to look for, because if he can just ramp quick enough and then just say, well, I'm just doing more things than you can do, then that's also a good thing, right? Because now I think that was a nourish off the top. So he can nourish, he can still put some pressure on and say, well, now next turn, you know, maybe he gets the Cenarian Ward, maybe he gets hold of a Solar. Gonna hold nourish for card draw then, I guess?
Card draw potential, yes. I think he's just looking at that hand and saying there's nothing I'm desperate to spend 2 mana on this turn, so I will remain flexible with this nourish as to whether I want mana or cards with it in the future, which I think does make sense.
Always horrible playing studies after the alignment, right?
Yep.
There's very few outcomes that you're really going to be a fan of, but this definitely helps. You're using the effective studies discount to get that Spectral Sight down to 0 to make it playable.
Ooh, okay. Now 1 nourish can certainly be used to draw here.
Oh, another Arbor up.
That's it. 18, nice.
Just like that. Gabby takes another, I won't say smooth game because of that Anaconda being there thrown away, unfortunately for Gabby at that first pull, but in general, just a solid game there, just a 1-2 punch with that Arbor up setup. And I will say, I do think, like, looking back on it, I was talking about the options of landscaping and going wider and just playing a like normal mana base Arbor up on top of that board, but Gabby chose to go for the Celestial and honestly just got rewarded, really dramatically reducing what Frenetic was really capable of in the turns going forward.
Yeah, I think just because of the timing of the game, the alignment was kind of essential that turn for Gabby, so he made that pick from the studies with that in mind. I'm playing alignment this turn, that's happening, let's not even think about it. What's the best card to have in my hand post-alignment? Decided it was Germination, didn't really end up being important, but you know, if he hadn't have played the alignment that turn, instead of gone for a more token strategy, Frenetic finds some way to complete a quest step that turn, gets the quest reward in hand. If you play alignment on a Demon Hunter who has the Kurtrus in hand already, you can just get OTK'd from that.
right.
Because their entire deck costs 0, and if they hit enough card draw in a row, acrobatics and so on, you can literally just die. So I think Gabby played that very, very nicely in the end, and unfortunately, we have reached the conclusion based on that 1 game sample size that that Demon Hunter list sucks. So sorry, children.
Yep, don't quick delete Sottle's list from your collection manager and rename it to anything else. Diving into game number 3, though, Gabby is going to be on. Honestly, memes aside, the big question mark deck in the lineup, regardless of what Gabby's previous performance has been with it, I would have said this about Warlock even if Gabby was positive, right? I think Warlock is the weak deck in this lineup and in this matchup. So this is the big one that Gabby really has to pull off a win with here.
Absolutely, yes. And again, Gabby has had some struggles on Warlock this week. He's generally struggled with the deck overall through Grandmasters, but I think that is largely influenced by a couple of bad weeks where he ran into a couple of specific target strategies, this week included. But things are not changing, and even though we saw, for example, Casey really making quick and easy work of a rogue in the previous series, that was a particularly awkward draw, I would say, on the side of the rogue. That does not always happen these days with how much slower the Warlock can end up being.
This is looking pretty good for Frenetic. Double Octo, still got that Shadow Step, and most importantly, right now, got that field contact available. Just have to take it a little bit slower, though, because unlike other matchups we've seen today, you cannot play an Octobot out against a Warlock and be confident that it won't be basically like one-shot. He does get the Anetheron down as well, though. Brain Freeze for Frenetic will be able to, at worst, stall it out. At best, actually finish it off.
Yeah, this is honestly a fairly similar play pattern.
Yeah, it is.
Or from that Casey game, right, where it was earlier Netheron, one very good hand to respond to it at that point, but the point it fell apart for J4 was that the first field contact turn did not feed him the second field contact turn, right? And that's sometimes where the deck can fall apart. His opponent Casey was able to respond with a huge Soul Rend, and that allowed him to pressure for the rest of the game. Although this has started the same way, it does not really look like it's going to progress in the same way from here, because I do think Frenetic's hand is looking a little bit higher quality overall than what we were seeing from J4.
Gabby doing the weird play, but the correct play of just wanting extra card in hand, wanting the ability to tap and not cause major issues, so he did use the coin for effectively nothing that turn, but he did need that hand space. Little bit awkward for Frenetic. Probably won't. This isn't a matchup where you want to use Prize Plunderer, or you're even okay using Prize Plunderer to reduce the hand and proc the Octo. But on that other side of it, does he really want to use the Ethereal Log Merchant?
Yeah, I think generally you are okay to do things like that in this matchup, because it's very, I mean, I wouldn't say it's very rare. It's uncommon that you need to do exactly 30, because you generally are able to pressure a little bit and they're doing so much damage to themselves. And even if you do need to do exactly 30, you can still do that -1 Ethereal Org Merchant most of the time.
Okay, with the Shadow Step. That turn looked very weird. And potentially wrong if a Shadow Step wasn't involved. Yeah, makes sense overall. I'm just going to Shadow Step up field contact and protect it. All looks good. Ray's dead. Coming out here from Gabby, and as is often the case, guaranteeing the Netheron. And these are the kind of big openings you need. Look at how that is a turn 6 2-mana giant minimum, and you can actually tap to make it even cheaper. These are the kind of turns that I feel like we haven't seen.
Oh, it's hitting Quest! Yep. It's hitting Quest! That costs 0! The Neophyte's coming down as well. That's revolting. What is that turn?
These are the turns that just technically should not be possible anymore, but Gabby makes it work.
It's quiet.
All right, good luck, God bless, Frenetic. You are going to need it this turn, buddy. You need to do some spectacular things. Brain Freeze still remaining, one Shadow Step still remaining for that Prize Plunderer that he has in hand. I think he'll be able to effectively clear off one of the huge threats, but he needs to be able to do significantly more than that to get this done. Kazaka's coming into hand costing 4, means there's not even a shot at a 1-mana Golem for poison deal damage. And if he's doing it this way, I think that means he is just resigned instead to fishing for the lethal here and giving himself the board space out needed to do that. He is having no regard for the stuff on the board on the other side.
Swindle. Foxy Swindle.
Swindle will draw a spell.
Naming cards.
No bleeds drawn directly from the Secret Passage, and that's probably a good thing for Frenetic, honestly, because they would cost him 2 apiece to play at this point, right? Which would be very difficult to achieve lethal with. Misses even on the bleed. The other Garot's way too expensive.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay, sorry, he's got 2 Plunderers. I was like, hang on a minute, do you not want to Shadow Step that? But yeah, okay, he has a second one, no problem. It's me being stupid. So as you said, he gets to deal with 1, but I just don't think it matters. Just like that. It's going to be game. It's going to be series. Gabby takes the victory over Frenetic, not only in this match of Hearthstone, Sottle, but in the total leaderboards. And there was the quick glance up to the camera. There's a bit of a wave as hello. Great win for Gabby there. I'm almost in shock at how quickly that series went, and honestly, how one-sided the series looked. And I'm not even trying to take anything away from Frenetic here. I just think there wasn't much he could do to stop the onslaught in that one. It's incredible.
I mean, it's a fantastic statement from Gabby, though, right? To win a series like that, when you call it one-sided, and of course I understand you're not trying to take anything away from Frenetic. But when we've been talking about this, about how, you know, Gabby's kind of called his shot, and he said he's going to come in to European GMs, show these washed-up GMs how things are done, and just be the best player in Europe, make it to Worlds, win the World Championship. this is the way to do that, right? It's like the two big title contenders play each other and one of them just wins 7-0, right? And just like, what are you talking? It's just rubber stamping the idea that he is so much further above and beyond everyone else. And now, yeah, take your seat on the throne, King, because you have secured first place overall in the Grandmasters regular season. That does mean that you, Gabby, will be going through to playoffs with top seeding already under your belt. We knew that already. Still means the same thing to Frenetic, but what it means more importantly than anything else for Gabby, I'm sure, is that he gets to look down on his subjects as he reigns, at least for now, as the King of European GM for this season.
And the best part is, just to remind everyone, of course, if you finish first or second place in a season, not only do you go to playoffs, but you go to playoffs with that advantage position, right? You effectively start off with a win, and which means you progress further on the bracket for free, basically. And the 7th and 8th effectively take that loss automatically as well to then, they're down one match. And like, does Gabby even need a free win? I'm surprised if he doesn't just say, you know what, it's fine, take the free win away, I'll still destroy everyone. Because I'm pretty confident he could at this point, but he will take the free win, of course.
He did tweet that last week when I was talking about how absurd it was to just walk into GM like this and secure top seeding with a week to go. He responded and said, you know what, I'll forfeit week 1 next year to give everyone a chance. And that, like, genuinely, that almost feels like where we're at this point. Because let's not forget, once again, we can contextualize this the other way around when we say Frenetic still had a great season because he's 4 points clear of Psycho, who only had a 5-point advantage. He would have still been in 3rd position in the overall league table even without that advantage. He did have that advantage, and Gabby has chased him down despite the fact he's had a great season himself, and now he's just opening up a gap. This is an absurd performance from Gabby.
The way I prefer to look at it is just give Gabby that 5-point lead.
Yeah, sure, whichever way you want to look at it. It's ridiculous.
More points I thought were actually available in your average Grandmaster season, but never mind. But yeah,